We've got a blockbuster trade today, as you can see, between the Chiefs and the Rams, with the Chiefs sending all-pro corner Trent McDuffie to the Rams in exchange for the Rams' second first-round pick this year, pick number 29, a fifth and a sixth-round pick this year as well, and a third-round pick in 2027. So the Rams are giving up a handful of draft picks, kind of pushing their chips all in with a tremendous corner in Trent McDuffie. Obviously, we know how bad that secondary struggled last year. I'm not really in the habit of describing a trade as good or bad, or assigning a winner or a loser to a trade, an hour after it happens. I just think that's incredibly short-sighted. It doesn't do any type of good necessarily. I think it's rooted in emotional. It's more of an emotional response than it is a targeted response, one filled with quality analysis. So I'm not going to get into winner, loser, good or bad. Rather, I'm just going to get into both sides of the trade, break it down from both perspectives, and really just kind of dive deep into what they're getting and why the move was made, essentially. All right, to start from the Chiefs' perspective, they ultimately, kind of kicking this whole thing off, they did not want to pay Trent McDuffie. They didn't want to devote all that cap space to Trent McDuffie. I think, as Jordan Schultz does a good job of pointing out here, as you can tell, they've long been of the belief that they can draft and develop corners, and this is a really good corner class. So by adding that second first-round pick, it allows them to go get a quality young corner that they can draft and develop while not having to pay for Trent McDuffie, who obviously was a great corner. We know that he's one of the best 5 or 10 corners in the game. No doubt about it. But ultimately, I have to give them kudos for this, because I think this is them sticking to a process that they know and trust. And it sounds simple, but this is why they've been so successful, in our era, right? Over the last 10 years. This is why, and obviously, Pat Mahomes is the massive reason as to why. Now, granted, they've been a good team. They've had good team-building exercises. Obviously, we know what Pat Mahomes does. When you have that position solidified, it's a no-brainer. I totally get that. But ultimately, the Chiefs have done a good job of building a team around him. When you look at their Super Bowl runs, there's no denying that the roster building, the team building has been very strong, very intact. And this is what good teams do. They stick to a process that they know and trust. They don't deviate from it, because sticking to a process that you know and trust doesn't mean anything if it's not a good process. We've seen that time and time again across multiple NFL franchises. This is a process that is a well-rounded, well-devised process that they are sticking to and trusting. Obviously, with the defense coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo, they can bring in a variety of different players to fit within their system, because we know that he is going to do a good job of maximizing the personnel at his disposal. We saw them do this 2 years ago with L'Jarius Sneed when they traded him to the Titans. Again, when you were looking at the way that they built their roster, with the way they spent money during those Super Bowl years, they were annually towards the bottom of the league. In fact, when they won the Super Bowl in 2022, I believe they were at the very bottom. They spent a league low total on corners. So again, this is the way that they have structured their team building. This is the way they structure their defense with Spags. It's primarily designated with what they do up front. They want to build it through the front 7, really their down guys. And then from there, they feel like they can put a variety of different pieces in the back end to cover and build reliable cover guys based on what they're doing up front. I think Deontay Lee really highlighted it here. And side note, I highly encourage you guys to go follow him on Twitter. He's a super sharp football analyst, great dude, high school football coach. Again, highly encourage you guys to go follow him. But he really tied it all together here with this point. Their roster building is in a little bit of a bind with who they have to pay, how much they have to pay. Again, McDuffie was going to command somewhere around $30 million APY. They cannot afford to build the roster the way they had been. And he had long been kind of a trade candidate over the last couple months, and we had a feeling it was going to happen. And again, to put the cherry on top, trading back into the 29th spot puts them in a great range to secure a corner at the end of the first round, because as we mentioned earlier, this is a really strong corner class for the draft. So really encouraged kind of by what the Chiefs are doing. I think it's a really great move for them. I know they're offloading a tremendous player, and that's going to hurt. But again, if we're trying to see this thing from both perspectives, right, there are pluses and minuses to both sides. Obviously, the minuses, they're losing a great player at a premium position, right, one of the best in the entire league, who is a huge benefit for their defense. But again, as we've talked about, you're getting the draft capital along with an opportunity to draft a great corner that you feel confident in drafting and developing. So that's kind of how I view it from the Chiefs side. Now, as for the Rams, we know their history with first-round picks, okay? And some of this started obviously before McVay and Stafford were there, and it's easier to make these kinds of moves when you have that stability at head coach and quarterback. Again, it goes back to what we just talked about with Kansas City. Andy Reid, Brett Veach, Pat Mahomes, right? The alignment, the unity between those three spots, between those kind of three positions within the organization allows you to make moves that the vast majority of other franchises can't afford to make. Now, of course, not included in this is the fact that the Rams do have the 13th overall pick, so they do have a first-round pick in their trade with the Falcons last year. But again, this is also an example of the Rams sticking to their process, a process they know and trust, and a process they know and trust because it's been successful. We've seen them obviously continue to make these moves for first-round picks, offloading them, getting veterans, getting players that are going to help them to win now. And this is what that move does. This is what adding McDuffie does for them. They are in a win-now window. With Stafford being there, we know that Stafford's shelf life is continuing to diminish with each passing year. Obviously, I know he played at an MVP level. He's not getting any younger, so the window of opportunity to win now and reach the mountaintop again with the Super Bowl victory, and it's narrowing with each passing year. What the Rams do decide to do with the 13th pick is going to be very interesting to note. I've seen receivers mocked them pretty heavily, maybe even Kenyon Sadiq. I've seen that name being floated around. I find it very hard to believe they're going to draft another tight end. But similar to the Chiefs, with this corner class being as good as it is, they're going to be in position to draft another solid corner. So we'll see what happens. I think 13 is a little rich for safety. If Caleb Downs is still there, awesome. We'll sprint to the podium and turn the card in. Do I think he's going to be there at 13 as it stands today? I do not. But if he is, you're sprinting to the podium, turning the card in for him. As for what the Rams will get out of McDuffie, that's going to be something I'm going to monitor very, very closely. Obviously, with their defensive coordinator, Chris Shula, he's very similar to Spags. I think he does a great job of playing to his personnel and doing a good job of getting guys in the right spots, especially in the secondary. And as you can see here, he's moved around, right? He kind of began his career as that perimeter corner who could move inside, kind of shifted to more of a heavier inside role, a slot role in 2023, and then kind of moved back to the perimeter. He's moved around the defense. Again, Spags formulates his defense around his personnel better than almost any other defensive coordinator in the NFL. So what Shula is going to do with McDuffie, I can't wait to see, but you get a little glimpse of who McDuffie is as a player throughout his career, kind of what he can provide. The other interesting part of this being that the Rams did just re-sign Quentin Lake, so who knows what's going to happen. Maybe they move him to more of a traditional safety role and they let Cam Curl walk. I'm not advocating for that. I think any opportunity you have to keep all three, as expensive as it's going to be, I think any opportunity you have to keep all three is going to be the main priority. But again, Chris Shula, fantastic defensive coordinator. Maybe it's an opportunity for him to kind of turn him into a Devon Witherspoon role where he's splitting his time between both. Would surprise me at all because McDuffie has the skill set to do it. But overall, kind of my thoughts on the trade. I think as a Rams fan, I'm really excited for it personally. Even though they did lose a lot of draft capital, I'm okay with that because we know that the Rams are capable of moving around to secure draft picks later on at later parts in the draft. Now, they have done a good job of drafting in the later rounds on day 3. So it does kind of suck to see them lose 5th and 6th round picks in this year's class because I think this is a class that is deeper than it is more top-end blue chip heavy. But again, we'll see what happens. A 3rd round pick in 2027. We'll see what kind of comp picks they can get for that year. Overall, exciting, kind of a blockbuster trade between the Rams and the Chiefs today.